This week's video, the one you're watching now, will be on YouTube. Next week's video will be on Patreon. My name is Van Neistat. I'm not like other people. I think in pictures, and I connect them.
This spirited man has discovered something about his brain, and he is relieved. He discovered it here, by listening to this woman. And this woman wrote a book because she discovered something about her brain and the brains of others like her. I'm listening to a podcast with a woman named Temple Grandin, and she's describing the way that object visualizers think. And she is an object visualizer, and I am almost moved to tears because it is exactly how I think. And growing up and learning, thinking that way, makes you feel like you're retarded. In the sense, less advanced in the development than is usual for one's age, retarded dates from the late 19th century. It has acquired offensive connotations in recent decades, and terms such as developmentally disabled or having intellectual disabilities are now preferred. This episode is about how our brains work, and thank you, BetterHelp, for sponsoring this episode and helping me learn how my brain works. Therapy is an excellent entry point into understanding our minds, and BetterHelp is an excellent entry point into therapy. They have an online questionnaire that you fill out, very simple, basic questions, and answering the questionnaire connects you to the most appropriate therapist for your needs. If you don't like your therapist, you can switch to a different therapist, and BetterHelp will meet you at your comfort level, be it text, audio only, or audio video. A lot of these videos I make, you hear this narrator's voice say, the spirited man this and the spirited man that. And that is me looking back at myself, looking back from a less emotional point of view at my behaviors and feelings. And I learned how to do that through working with therapists. So if you're curious about therapy or you're in need of a therapist, check out the link below, and there's also, it's the same link in the description. Thank you, BetterHelp. One of the places where object visualizers excelled was shop classes. And I remember in 8th grade, 14 years old, we welded the chairs that were broken for our junior high. Little kids, 14-year-old kids, mask with a rod and and they're all gone. She said 20 years ago they got rid of them from the schools. And 20 years ago I graduated high school. 30 years ago. Graduated high school 30 years ago. This is San Miguel Allende, Mexico, which is an extremely visual place. Everywhere is beautiful. Even that black tarp is like beautifully draped across that mesh rebar. And you just can't go anywhere without seeing beauty. So what is an object visualizer? The world could be roughly divided into two kinds of thinkers. People who think in pictures and patterns, more on that difference later, and people who think in words. People who are primarily verbal thinkers tend to comprehend things in order, which is why they often do well in school, where learning is mostly structured sequentially.
it makes sense that they are drawn to and tend to succeed in the kind of high visibility careers that depend on facility with language. Teachers, lawyers, writers, politicians, administrators. A lot of my enemies fall into those categories. So that's what an object visualizer isn't. And an object visualizer is a kind of visual thinker. And there are two main types of visual thinkers. First is the spatial pattern visualizer, who sees in patterns and abstractions. These people are good at algebra, calculus, computer programming. Isabel is a spatial pattern visualizer. And she took a Myers-Briggs type personality test, intelligence test, to determine kind of what careers she should choose. And she scored in the 99.99th percentile, so the 1 in 10,000th percentile, for the ability to take an object and understand whether it will fit in a space. So you could give her a bag of marbles and a little jar, and you say, will all these marbles fit in this jar? And better than 999 other people, Isabel can say yes or no. And it's insane seeing her do it. And it's so handy for moving and putting beds in rooms and things like that. Isabel's career is she's an industrial designer, and she can build spaces completely from scratch, and beautiful spaces. They're beautiful as well because she's a visual thinker. But she's a visual pattern, what is it? It's a spatial pattern visualizer, I think. Temple Grandin, the woman who wrote this book, and I, to some extent, though not as far on the spectrum as Temple Grandin, we are object visualizers, which basically means we think in pictures. And so the interviewer in this podcast I was listening to in Mexico said, okay, when I say rose, tell me what comes to mind. And she immediately went, there was a rose bush in my backyard growing up. I'm seeing that. She said, I don't have that much inventory of roses in my mind, but I'm seeing that. And then the object visualizer is associative with these images, not linear, associative. So she said, and so now I'm thinking of the thorns, and I'm thinking of the ants and the dirt. Now, when I was listening to this podcast and I heard him say rose, what immediately popped into my mind was a painting that my aunt did of some roses at my grandparents' farm. And then my associative brain immediately went and found it. And it went to this box I keep in the studio, which has roses on it. And in my mind, the box opens and I dig through and there's the painting. And a couple days ago, when I went to look for the painting so I could put it in this video, it was exactly where the pictures in my head said it would be. And one of my Jedi skills is that I'm very good at finding lost objects. If someone loses an earring at a party, and this has happened at Yaniv Shulman's wedding, a woman lost a pearl earring. There's 100 people there. It's outside. There's grass and stuff. And I said, this is my job. This is my job. And I found it. So object visualizers are naturally good at animals, art, photography, and mechanical devices. We have a sort of inherent understanding of mechanical devices. Phone is ringing. All right, bye. Understanding mechanical devices, which is a skill I've had my entire life. I can just look at a machine or something and understand what's going on. Grandin said that if she sees an LCD screen at an airport with 1 pixel missing, she notices it immediately. And in my mind, I'm like, hang on, that's the only thing I will notice. That will be the first thing I notice if I look. Boom, there's there's 2 or 3 pixels missing on my LCD screen of my phone. And it's the first thing I see when I look. It's because my mind, that's the kind of mind I have. She said a general diagnostic for determining, oh, do I have an object visualizer brain, is your relationship to IKEA instructions. Do you love IKEA instructions or do you hate IKEA instructions? I love IKEA instructions. Like, I get that. It's like a comfort to me. I open it. I know exactly what's going on. And I know why they're zooming in on things and why they're saying, like, not this screw because it looks a lot like this other screw, and why it's going in order. And some people, verbal thinkers, they want a list of words that tells them how to put the thing together. Insert screw into blah, blah, blah. And I can do that. And when I do that, and a lot of my videos are that, it's very difficult because there's so much visual information that the tendency is like to make it 8,000 words and too specific. Part of the reason why I chose filmmaking is because it's a marriage of these two things. It's a marriage of the verbal and the visual, of course. So the bulk of my energy is spent structuring the words like this. Like, I've spent 3 days writing this down, but all this camera work and stuff I will do in less than 2 days, and the editing, because the verbal structure and the linear is very difficult for me. It's something I've muscled through. Another quality or another difficulty that object visualizers have is object visualizers tend to be very messy. Part of my identity on this channel is about organization, because that is a war I fight every single day. I am on a Thursday when I upload these videos, all of my spaces are a total wreck. There's papers everywhere, there's tools and supplies and everything everywhere, because I'm in my object visualization brain. I'm not in my forced discipline brain of putting things away. And in high school, one of my superlatives was most disorganized. And I think they didn't publish it because they thought it was too mean. But we did a big survey. Everybody did a survey and they filled it out. And I was voted by my class of 200 people, the most disorganized person in my class. It's just something I worked on. And New York City was a big training ground for that, because you have to be organized in New York City. You lose your Metro card, you lose your keys, that's like a day's work. That's going to cost you. I wanted to make this video because I sort of captured the moment when I was in Mexico where I had this revelation. And it had a very big effect on me. So I'm looking through the Mexico footage to put this video together, and I find this shot of a hardware store that I loved. And in the windows of the hardware store are planks with numbers on them. And I look at them, and in 5 seconds, I know what's going on. I know why there's numbers on there. I know why they're in such and such order. And it occurs to me, that's because you have an object visualizer brain. This is a perfect example to illustrate how this brain works. So there's a series of boards. They're numbered. They're in a steel frame. There's a padlock at the bottom of the window. These boards cover the glass at night so no one breaks in and steals all the tools inside the hardware store. There's has the Roman numeral 1 across the top. That's the first window. That's the window on the left. One set of boards has the Roman numeral 2 across the top, and that's 2. That's the second set of boards. And then underneath that are not Roman numerals, but Arabic? The Arabic numerals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe on the other one. 3 or 4 maybe 3 seconds in my mind. I know exactly what that is. They unlock that padlock, they swing out that frame in the daytime, they take all those boards out one by one, they put them somewhere, and now they have windows, and they do it with the left and the right, number 1 and number 2. The boards have to go in a certain order or else they don't fit. So they put them in the order that's in the Arabic numerals, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, 2 of them are out of sequence. There's a 0 and a 1, I believe, are out of sequence. And the reason for that, I think, is because it doesn't matter. And they just grab those 2. They have to put this thing away every single night. And it doesn't matter. And they go ding, 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 ding. And they put it together and they lock it.
This tree's growing out of the road and they're just leaving it. So your car's got to fit under. And I don't think my car does.
And having this revelation in Mexico was particularly cathartic, it like got into my soul. Because one of the reasons why Mexico functions so well and the reason why I love Mexico so much is because there is so much hands-on, visceral, mechanical aptitude of the Mexican citizens. I don't know why. I don't know enough about their educational system to understand why this is such a thing. But for me, it translates into this beauty. You know, I think the reason I was moved to tears listening to her book on tape is because I noticed growing up the difficulty of having this brain, because most of the world and most of your educational system, or our educational system, is verbally based. So most people you're talking to are verbal. So it made me feel very stupid to have this kind of a brain. For me, if I hear something, I don't remember it. I just will not remember it. That's why I have all the to-do lists, is because I can see the thing. I write it down and I see the thing that I have to do. And then it's more likely to go in my mind because it's in my file of images. But, you know, I didn't develop these skills and coping mechanisms and embrace this kind of brain that I have. You know, that wasn't until I was an adult. I wanted to be an engineer when I was a kid. Object visualizers get kneecapped by algebra. We can't do it. We're very bad at it. Calculus, it's too abstract. And the argument that Temple Grandin makes is that we are losing all of these object visualizers to the rigors of these STEM programs in our public schools. And they're weeding out these very valuable people. And she goes on to say that she knows welders who barely graduated high school and have the 6th grade understanding of mathematics, but have 20 patents each for sophisticated mechanical devices. Like each one of these guys that she knows has 20 patents. These are multi-millionaire guys with 6th grade math educations who today's educational system would likely have weeded them out. And her mission, and I think unconsciously my mission too, is to somehow save this kind of brain from our education system. And I think I'm doing it unconsciously because I'm trying to save the me when I was little, and somehow it just things work differently. That we had shop back then, and I don't know. Somehow I was able to survive and get through it. I was 47 years old when I got this information, and you know, the relief, it reduced me to tears.
My whole life I've always needed to be and sought and sacrificed to be near beautiful things and in beautiful environments. And I thought that was a flaw. I thought that reflected a superficiality about me. But it turns out that's just how my brain is, because I'm a visual thinker. Is that what it's called? Object thinker? Well, I'm listening to the Temple Grandin book.
My name is Temple Grandin. I'm not like other people. I think in pictures, and I connect them.
On this week's Patreon-only video,
I try to be a man of integrity, and as such,
I won't drive around in a car with bird shit on it. But for months, I've been conceiving this gadget as I fall asleep at night.